2, 1. Riddle. No more snipers. That sucks. Maybe if Slayer tactical is normal again. We'll see. We shall see. We shall see. It's been a while. A couple days.
The laws, all the monopoly laws that the government has it in control and let the market decide it. But the founders said, no, even the states can't just print up their own money. But I think in a free society, a libertarian society, you could have contract. If you're setting up a bank and you say, this is the unit of account, and they say, and you're going to use gold, you have to live up to your contract.
It seems like crypto is the new contract, which is data. Like, what's the account symbol? It's how much work was done to produce the Bitcoin or whatever. So you can see on a database, well, there's this much computer power used.
Well, yeah, and that gets a little more complex because if you say what's behind gold, you know, everybody knows about gold. They've used it for 5,000 years, so people know what it is. But it's always been. Gold didn't fall out of the sky and become money. Gold came out of the ground and was pretty, and they used it. You know, jewelry and it valued and all the important things of money. That happened. Then it became very practical to be used as money. But you might find 20 things and more all the time. There's actually things being advanced now. Even when I was in medical school, we studied about, there were some arthritises that could be treated with gold and silver, gold especially, and there's more and more. Silver's been used as a medication, and so it should be legalized for that reason, but that's what helps make it money. That isn't that you're using money to do that. It means that is what makes it money. I don't think you could make the same argument with a crypto. What are you going to say to? We've created a crypto coin because we used to use this in medicine.
Well, let me. I wanted to say this. I think because of you, Dr. Paul, you made a lot of people millionaires and billionaires. Because when your message was going around about the U.S. dollar being unsound based on these policies, there were a lot of people that were trying to figure out what they could do to store their value properly. Of course, gold and silver were big. But when Bitcoin emerged, a whole bunch of libertarians and people who had heard your message said, I'm going to check this thing out. And they bought a bunch, and 10 years later, they're worth $300, $400 million. Because governments all over the world are buying crypto and trying to use it. Many people have decided for whatever reason it has value to them. And the early adopters who were paying attention to the problems of the US dollar, they got to rise along with it.
So what does that prove?
I don't know if it proves anything. I just think, like, if they listened to you for whatever reason, they ended up becoming very wealthy.
Yeah, but the one thing for sure, I wasn't giving investment advice.
Right, no, for sure.
I mean, it turns out it's okay, but I might have been talking about agriculture.
Yeah.
You could go out and buy land. Jimmy Rogers, oh yeah, that's what we should do. And that serves that function. But I think that's a little bit different. The way I answer those questions is, you know, does that mean you want to be cautious and make some rules about Bitcoin? No, I'd let the market decide whether people really want Bitcoin or not. I go to a lot of Bitcoin crypto meetings and things, especially early on. And at these meetings, I became a little bit nervous because they had one individual there that they were hovering around, and these are the people that was running the conference. They were hovering around this woman that said, oh, she had had experience with Washington, D.C. as a lobbyist in Ways and Means, and will protect you when they start writing the laws about it. And I thought, no, you don't need... That's not my way of looking at it. I mean, if it's designed mainly to prevent fraud or something like that, you have to be open to it. But I just think that you don't need laws, to tell people how to protect against gold.
What concerns me about tying money to a hard thing like gold is that someone can steal all the gold.
Not today, Fred.
Like if we tie it to anything, then that thing can be taken and hoarded by someone.
Maybe, but they've, the silver people back in the 70s, Hunt Brothers, they cornered the market and they took it up when silver was $5 or $3. They took it up to $50. They were hoarding it.
Wow.
But the market came along and took care of it.
But real quick, Ian, Bitcoin's been stolen tons of times. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
They find ways.
And right now, gold is at an all-time high. Bitcoin just hit above $30,000 today as well. And I remember doing my coverage of currency collapses in Venezuela and in Zimbabwe, and we were talking about this a little bit before the show. Before a currency kind of collapses, a lot of different things happen before it does. There's many things that happen in many different years, and then all of a sudden when it drops quickly, and the effects are one by one by one by one, and it goes by so fast people are shocked and surprised. Do you think that is possible in the United States? Do you see a possible currency collapse, and potentially on what kind of time scale?
No, I don't think it's possible. It's going to be. It's going to happen.
Inevitable.
It will, because they can't keep doing this. But you mentioned that some of those people that took my advice, I wonder if they're going to give me a cut on what they made. No, it just happened that there was an alternative, and so far the alternative has made a lot of people rich. But do you think there were 10 people, 100 people, 5,000 people, or 1 million people that bought cryptocurrency or crypto between 30 and 68? And it's on the way up and then on the way down. There's a lot of buying and selling. Yeah. So it is. Some people make a law, but the whole thing is I want a definition. I mean, they can do it. It would be legal as long as there's no fraud involved. But you still have to have a definition. I can define a gold dollar, and for us it was not rounded off, but at the time of the Constitution, they had a precise weight of silver, which was the real monetary issue. But it was the gold was at $42 an ounce, and no, $26 an ounce, and that would stay there for a long, long time. But that didn't prove anything other than we had a lot of gold, and we would. It's sort of like the Romans did. They'd advance their kingdom and go out and steal all the gold from the people. And in a way, we have advanced our empire, and we have become very wealthy. But now we're consuming it. So definitions will change according to that, but you still know, it was $20 an ounce, and then it went to $35 an ounce, cheated the American people, total fraud, and then it was released in '71, and it went to $800 an ounce. Then it had to be the market adjusting, and that's a benefit. The market will sort that out. But the definition is gone. My argument is you have to have a definition if you want to have a sound economy. And the world has never been on a fiat currency to the extent that we have now with the paper money dollar.
I just want to make a quick correction. Gold is not an all-time high, but near all-time highs. I'm sorry if I misspoke earlier.
Well, I wanted to.
It's close.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you about military intervention and war and all that stuff. I know that you are one of the biggest opponents of the U.S. getting involved overseas, and I'm curious your thoughts on where we've gone since you were in Congress. Has it gotten worse, and what your views are?
Well, the principle has gotten much worse. They've endorsed the principle, and the big thing was probably one that is annoying to me was. Because I remember it, and that was we had World War I, World War II, and we went through the process of declaring war and having an enemy, and it did. I think they could have been avoided, but it was done the right way in the sense that we declared the war, and the wars didn't last that long. We were only a year or so on World War I, and World War II is 3 years. Think of how that was taken care of. But after the war. And I remember this issue very clearly because it was in 51, when Truman said, he never probably made an announcement. We have to have a police action. We have to go and preserve democracy for Korea. And my comparison was, and look, we wanted to do that in South Korea. And we lose 60,000 people and kill millions of the Vietnamese and all this. And then we lose, we walk away, lost all this money and all these lives. And what happened? Was there these are just realistic arguments, but was there the domino effect? That's what we were preached to, the domino effect. Communism is going to take over, and they did a lot of that. But guess what? When we lost the war in Vietnam, we left, and all of a sudden something weird happened. They started acting like capitalists, and just think of all we won in peace versus all that we lost in war. And sometimes people won't even think of the slightest consideration that maybe a little bit of that philosophy could be applied to those people who are looking forward to a war with China.
I feel like it's like a Chinese finger trap, that you've got so many people who want war, and they make the argument, we need to go there to stop Russia, we need to go there to stop the terrorists. But in doing these things, in engaging in foreign intervention, it's creating recoil or creating blowback. And it's making the conflicts worse. It's
that's by design. I mean, that's what keeps the machine running. That's what keeps the money flowing. We talk about the Fed all the time. The Fed is what makes war possible. It's what makes the empire possible. And it's funny because you sit around and you laugh at the domino theory. Oh man, that's like something out of the '60s. We're living in it right now. If we don't stop Russia in Ukraine, they're going to be marching through Paris. Tomorrow they're gonna take Estonia. Where's Estonia? I have no idea, but they're gonna take it. I heard it on TV. So we still believe in the domino theory. It's still the basis of our foreign policy. In fact, who was it? It was a politician. It actually may have been McCarthy, Speaker of the House, and I could be wrong, who said, well, we got to fight them. Basically, he literally said we got to fight them over there because otherwise we're going to fight them over here. I mean, I thought the Bush era was over.
Right.
So these things are just regurgitated because they're enormously profitable to the most well-connected people,
The only value I see in foreign intervention is that fascism sometimes can be extremely peaceful. That's one of the worst things about fascism is it's insidiously quiet. I mean, modern fascism, it's capitalist. They run your social media. They make you see things you don't understand. And so at some point, if you don't do anything, it will just happen around you.
Let me try to elaborate on what I think what you're saying is what we're seeing with big tech, what we're seeing with the establishment, this authoritarian takeover, subverting our systems, buying people out, and slowly creeping in and taking things over. Is that?
Yeah, BlackRock, these
Right.
mega corporations that are buying land and things like that's it's happening in the name of peace because they're being done with dollars. But
I don't know if fascism is the right word because some people might take the word fascism literally. But we're seeing, State Street, Vanguard, BlackRock. Corporatism. They're buying everything up. They're using the system against us and exploiting it. And it's not just that. These big hedge funds and firms, they're getting Federal Reserve money, basically infinitely printed and given to them to do this. So it's the lucrative, I guess fascism is probably the right way to say it, the lucrative merger of corporation and state to take over the whole system.
Under Mussolini's definition, and I think you are correct in some instances there, especially with a lot of these institutions like BlackRock having lucrative contracts now in Ukraine. There's a lot of business deals. There's a lot of politicians, sons and daughters who have a lot of interests in that particular region. But I kind of wanted to ask both of you guys, if you guys were the Secretary of State, How do you handle the Ukraine situation right now? What's the call to action?
Well, I have a real easy thing to do. It's not complex, and everybody will understand it, but nobody will do it because I used it in my debates. You know, how are we going to end the wars in the Middle East? Yeah, we've sort of come around to your position. We should have done it, but here we are. We're here now. And my answer is we just marched in. We can just march out.
Yes.
And
I remember you had a statement where you said if someone is given the wrong prescription, you don't just keep giving them the same prescription. You stop.
that sounds pretty good. Did I
Yes,
say that?
You did say that. Yes, it was brilliant. And I heard that and I said, I don't see it any other way. If we all agree it's wrong, we just stop.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that they've been prescribed crack cocaine and heroin and fentanyl all mixed into one, and they're high as a kite, and they're doing really horrible things, especially with what's happening in Ukraine right now. There's so many innocent Ukrainians dying. There's so many innocent young men dying in that specific region, and I think the main reason we didn't blow each other up during the Cold War was because of negotiations. Was because we were able to actually sit at the table and negotiate. We're not even doing that now, which is just absurd and crazy in my opinion.
I asked him last night what he would do, and he was like, "Well, we'd take our troops out and negotiate some sort of economic, resolution with Russia." And I don't know, Ron, do you think that would be ethical to? Because I think what they're trying to do is take Sevastopol, the warm water trade port in the Black Sea.
Yeah, but what happens when there's sincere efforts, either with China or Russia, that we could pursue? The deep state, which is not Republican, not Democrat, they're deep into controlling the whole system. They make it so that you become a heathen, you become a Nazi, or they'll give you all kinds of names, and you're unpatriotic. That's the thing. When I wanted to bring the troops home, I was unpatriotic and I didn't care about the troops. I says, how could you argue that? I just want to bring them home so they don't get killed.
Yeah, more troops donated to you than any other presidential candidate. People forget about that. And you were one of the only anti-war voices out there that was finally getting at least a little bit of attention on the corporate media, even though it was skewed. Even though when you were polling high, they made sure that it looked like you were polling low. They played so many underhanded tricks against you. I was wondering, can you talk to that a little bit? And how do we navigate this media sphere when they control the narrative and they're playing so unfair?
Well, I resort to something that I find my comfort zone, and that is that I'm not there. I don't have the ability, nor is the support there to really change it. I want to audit the Fed so people understand it. I don't say, okay, the litmus test, if you care about anything at all, you have to sign on to my bill that the Federal Reserve is abolished in 2 weeks. So I wanted people just have to, discuss it, and that's what happens. It gets turned down. We have opportunity. We could talk to China a lot more. I thought it was pretty exciting when the great Nixon decided to sneak over to China, and it was an exciting time. People think, boy, maybe they will change, and they did. But the big problem is that we won't admit is they be paying pretty darn good at capitalism. They sold us stuff and they took our money and invested it. And what do? We steal the money from the people, and then we invest it to the military-industrial complex to go over and drop bombs on people. Then we say, I wonder why they don't like us.
I've been thinking lately if we could repurpose our military-industrial complex to start building drones by the tens of millions, and then take them out into space and blow them up for training, and then put onboard artificial intelligence on the drones. The drones can tell us what we're doing wrong, make us better at fighting drone swarms, and then we can not blow people up. Because I still want to make it profitable for Lockheed Martin, but I don't want to hurt the people with Lockheed Martin.
Okay, let me try. I think you bring up an actual interesting point, and I'll rephrase it. I think I understand. The military-industrial complex is going to move towards the path of least resistance, and that is they need war to stay in power, and they want war. So they lobby for war, they get more money from the government. So what we need is to divert their profits into nonsense, like building drones in outer space, so they keep getting lucrative contracts, but eventually fizzle out of existence because they're being given money for the government to do literally nothing.
Yeah, they don't need war, they need profit. And they think that war is the most profitable thing right now. But if we could create a more profitable system, i.e. drone defense.
But there's one statistic you have to deal with, and I'm not going to argue this is authentic, but I read it, so something. But they say people who get involved in this kind of stuff in the military and all, 5% of them are psychopaths. They love war. It isn't just the money.
Yeah.
They love power. They love money, and a few of them are sort of bad news psychopaths.
Like that they enjoy hurting other. I know that they like seeing how their weapons train on real people. Like they want to see how it works.
Well, this was the article that they were arguing in that case, that some people, you see it in domestic life all the time. It just was so astounding to me when it's too common now to even be news. But somebody would be robbing a store, and somebody would be lying on the floor just trying to hide, and the hoodlum comes in, it just fills the person with bullets. I mean, that's just not...
I wanted to ask you, going back to the, you're talking about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, World War II. I'm 37. I'm curious, with everything we're seeing in today, with political conflict, as you mentioned, with crime, was it at all like this in the 60s, 70s, and the 50s, or anything like that?
Well, I wrote something recently that what it was like in 1945, because everybody said the world's going to end tomorrow and things are very, very bad, and I agreed with that. I talk about it all the time. But then I just went over the statistics of World War I and World War II. Millions of people died. And it was very a disaster. So it's continued, but the founders made the point, and I'm a strong believer in it, that ultimately the kind of society we have depends on a prevailing attitude, both intellectually and spiritually, of a community. Because the non-aggression principle, fortunately, can be used by people in a spiritual realm or in a pragmatic zone. Just say this doesn't make any sense, and yet we continue to do it. But I think it's the nature of mankind, and I never heard discussions about nihilism. Of course, that's been discussed in the philosophy books for a long time, but nothing like it's talked about now. And I've sort of been concentrating on that because if you don't have truth, which we don't have anymore, then you have nihilists, and you're dealing with people that have no conscience. And when you understand that, then you understand the people who just shoot to kill and do all these things and do all, and that's going to cause chaos and people are going to die. That'll open the doors for true Marxism. We have to get rid of all this garbage you people are living with. So for us to devise, the perfect socialist state, we need to get rid of all these notions about freedom and capitalism and honest money, and that is their goal. And since they're nihilists, they don't care.
So do you think that the reason we're seeing the spike in crime is that these people are intentionally releasing criminals and making not enforcing laws because they want to destroy the system?
Well, I think that they've just lost all contact with reality. I think they are psychopathic in that sense. A psychopath has lost contact with reality, and that sort of can be a collective thing. The mob psychology. I mean, we're operating sort of with a mob psychology that people are joining this, and they have all kinds of excuses. I've been, as much as I try to think about this, getting all these corporations and so many people to go along with this lockdown. And most of them are, you think they can't be as far off as I described, but they just go along with it, and it's sort of scary. But I think the point that the founders made is they said this Constitution isn't worth much if the people are immoral and have no principles and they don't believe in truth. How can they believe in honest money if they don't have any principles? And they don't have a unit of account. They don't have a unit of account for the money. They don't have a unit of account for social matters.
Perhaps this is why they're saying 2 + 2 = 5, which was a big thing they're still pushing, to be honest.
Or what is a woman?
You said something
Yeah,
really.
that's it. That's a good example.
You said something really profound about the non-aggression principle in regards to spirituality. Like, I know about non-aggression principle militarily, but the idea that in a conversation you could have a non-aggression principle with another human, and that if you live like that, maybe it'll create a society where then that starts to happen.
But it happens all the time. I've made optimistic statements, and I have to be careful because it sounds too optimistic. I say, I remember growing up as a kid in the Depression, World War II. I was in grade school, high school, college, medical school, military. And I said, there's hardly anybody that I met that I thought was a real scoundrel. My neighbors have been easy to get along with, and we happen to be believers. So the people we associated with in a spiritual way, they were never a threat to us. So there were a lot. So my impression, if it was my narrow impression, but most people would say, "Yeah, but what a boring life you had," you know, and they wouldn't accept this because life is much different, and you have to have a good time too, you know.
Well, it's the old curse, may you live in interesting times.
Yeah.
So maybe it's kind of good when your life is boring. You get to focus on your passions. You get to take care of your family.
It's good to be forceful in your life, but not necessarily aggro. Like, there's a difference in like forcing your personality and beliefs on someone and being aggressive with it.
Well, this is the issue I see today. We have what we would refer to as the left and the right, or whatever words you want to use to describe, you know, wokeness and freedom or whatever. One faction says lie, cheat, and steal because the only truth is power, or there is no truth but power. The other side is an amalgam of different ideologies that all tend to agree on the rights of the individual. So I think while all of us in this room may disagree on certain, principles or philosophies, we mostly agree with life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that's where we differ with those who seek to use aggression against us or others to control them and gain power. We actually think people should be free to live their lives, you know, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, but I think people... the shortcomings comes from, I'll use the word conservative, but the conservative element sometimes wants to tell you exactly how you should live. But if a conservative who wants to do that accepts the principle of non-aggression, yes, he can be critical. He might want to approve it because if it happens to be somebody in your family or a friend and they're killing themselves with drugs and all that, you might try to help people. But I think that the people will respond. But the problem is that there's this momentum, and I think economics have a lot to do with it. Because things, even though there's still a lot of wealth in this country, and people think they're a lot richer than they really are because it's all on debt, and that's why bad times are coming, because it's going to get worse when they know how poor they really are.
Well, there's a couple questions I have for you. Why do you think we're seeing this explosion of homelessness in so many major cities? And why is it that they are at the same time, and I think these are related, don't get me wrong, but I'm bringing them both up. They say that it's hard to find workers, but we're also seeing this wave of unemployment, of homelessness. You'd think those two things would solve themselves.
I think it's a reflection of stupid policy, welfareism. And that means they know it. Look what happened when the COVID broke out and people wanted to take advantage of it. Everybody got checks, big checks, And they have so much money that they printed that it's sitting around. How are we going to spend all? And so they feel like they can trust that. But the trouble is that the payment comes in a different way. The taxes are very high, much higher than they really think. The liquidation of debt, the default. People keep worrying about, will the government not send me my check? Is there going to be a default? The default is rip-roaring, and it's going to get a lot worse. That means that if I owed you $100 last week and I can give it to you today, it's only worth $50. You've lost $50. And governments do that. They steal from you, and they transfer wealth, and that's where the real problem is. And people don't understand that because they say, the one statement that I've heard for so many years is the people who get into trouble as a result of stupid government, they say, the only problem I have is I don't have enough money to pay my bills. I go to the grocery store and it's $200 and I only have $100. So it's always a shortage of money. And the problem is there's too much money printed out of thin air and it doesn't have value to it. There's no unit of account. So having a unit of account in social things and economic matters, I think, are very similar.
This is how I explain it to people. I went onto Amazon and I was searching for a tablet, put it in my shopping cart, and I think it was like $470. I forgot to buy it. 2 days later or so, I go back on Amazon and there's a notice. It says, a price change for an item in your cart. I click it and it says, this item is now $600. This is the easiest way for the average person to understand how inflation is happening so rapidly. I could have bought it 2 days ago for, you know, $150 less. Well, that means if you made a plan and said, okay, I make X dollars per hour, I have Y bills, and the tablet costs Z. That means I have to work this many hours to be able to buy this tablet at the end of the month. So you work those hours, and then by the time the end of the month comes, the tablet now costs twice as much because you weren't actually making any money. As you were working your job and saving, you were losing money.
See, free market Austrian economy is completely different than Keynesianism. Keynesianism believes in the computer. You put in the numbers, and they'll tell us, print $100 here, and the people will do this. That's not true. It never works out because one of the principles of Austrian economics that has helped me understand it is the artificiality of it. It's the pseudo theory that you can't measure things that way because there's a psychological factor there, and it's how bad do we want. So if we doubled the money supply in this room, we're not all going to do the same thing. You can't tell what the people will do, what their measurement will be. Some might save it, some might spend it. That's why this theory, this subjective theory of value, I think explains it. That's why it's a mishmash. That's why you can go, 10 years and gold prices doesn't move, and yet they've been printing money like crazy. Then all of a sudden we have our prices going up. But that's all explainable through Austrian economics.
I did find that really interesting that the price of gold has been fairly stagnant, I think, over the past 10 years.
Is that artificial? Is it being artificially held down?
Well, there's a lot of manipulation. That's the most important price fixing that they can do because the gold eventually will measure value. No matter, they will be the unit of account. And that's the last thing that they have to cling to say that the dollar still has value. And they've been able to manipulate, boy, ever since Roosevelt went in and took the gold in, it was $35 an ounce and all that. But I think even today, they can manipulate that price of gold. And
I'm way off. I was way wrong on that. Sorry.
But they will have to, eventually there's going to be chaos from it, and that's why we would like to try to avoid it.
Yeah,
so real quick, just a correction. In January of 2001, gold was $265 an ounce. It reached a peak around September of 2011 at $1,700. It dipped down August 2015 to $1,121. And as of today, it is bouncing around near $2,000 and officially crossed to $2,018. So actually, it skyrocketed after the first economic crisis, went down a little bit, and then skyrocketed back up again with the past economic crisis. So yeah, gold is way up.
Okay, that $1,000 was 2015 or something.
Yes.
That
2016.
$1,000. When I watched that as the beginning of the current bull market in gold. Because you had bull market 35 up to 800, then you had 1,000 up to the second one. But this is the third one where it was $1,000. Now it's up to $2,000, and I think it's just the beginning. And if you look at percentages of what happens in a bull market in gold, what's the percentage going from 35 up to 800? Even though it didn't stay there, that's the movement that it had.
250% or something like that. Is it? So it's possible. It's more than that. It's possible we'll see like a 10x increase in the cost of gold, the value of gold. I don't know what you call it, cost or value. Is the same? Is the word interchangeable?
What?
Could you see gold going up by one magnitude from 2,000 to 20,000 an ounce?
Yeah, well, I think it'll go to zero. I mean, I think it won't be in trading. I think the dollar will go to zero before that. But no, yes, it will. If they've held it together longer, yeah. I think in your lifetime you'll see gold at $5,000 an ounce if they can keep it from totally crashing the economic system.
I agree. I'm looking at this chart right now, and it compares the dollar, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and gold. And if in the year 2000 you invested all your money in gold, it would be worth twice as much as stock in the Dow Jones or S&P 500.
Did you compare it to crypto?
If you bought Bitcoin around 2009 or whatever, it would be worth 20,000%. So
from the beginning.
From the beginning, and
do it.
From when? 2015.
2016 was when gold was $1,000. So I think 2016 would be an interesting metric.
From 2016.
Yes.
So let's do this. So if you were to buy Bitcoin in, why is it? Okay, there we go. 2016.
Yeah.
Let's me go back to 2018. Bitcoin was at $8,000. Today it's at $30,000. So it's
you can look
more.
at charts and probably prove almost anything you want on the short run.
You mentioned.
I'll just put it this way: in the past 5 years, Bitcoin is up 113%. Gold is 53%. S&P 500 is 52%. Dow Jones is 35%. If you go back to the year 2000, I think is not necessarily relevant for people my age, then you would have gained way more buying gold than anything else. And then in the past 5 years, the S&P 500 and gold are comparable.
We all look at that and we think about investments. How do we protect our wealth? And that is important because that's how do I live? But ultimately, if you look at all those different investments that we have that we can do, actually, the only thing that's going to be important to us is if we have our freedom. Because what did Roosevelt do? Within one announcement, a month after he was in office, he took all the gold in.
By force?
Yeah, confiscated the gold. There was gold confiscation in the United States. Many people don't even know about
and
this.
Nobody in the United States was allowed to own gold from 1933 up till 1975, and that was when I was trying to get gold legalized. And that's a long time. So that's pretty amazing.
But I think one of the most important metrics to look at is the purchasing power of the dollar. And when you look at that and what it used to buy you and now what it buys you, I mean, there's horrible, tragic stories of individuals burying their money or putting it underneath their couch. And I'm like, people don't understand. One of the biggest taxes out there is inflation. It's a hidden tax. Many people don't know about it. But the value of your dollar, of what you worked hard for, is slowly being eviscerated by the government and their irresponsible financial policies.
There was a story where a young couple opened up the floorboards in their attic and found a box that their grandfather, or that this guy's grandfather, had hidden away with $50,000 in it. And boy, were paper money. And boy, were they so excited to find $50,000. And they're like, wow, Little do they realize that it's basically $1 million if he had properly invested it, because the US dollar is not sound.
Exactly, and just seeing this happening, because now I think it's kind of quickening. Now when you go to the grocery store, you see it more and more kind of evident and more in your face. Not just with egg prices, but that has to deal with a lot of other circumstances and situations. But overall, when you're at the grocery store, when you pay for everything, it's a lot more than it was before, and that's not an accident.
We just went to the grocery store, and as we are checking out, it was $200 for like one half bag of, it was like cheese, tea, some meat, and some hummus. And then we were like, how is this $200? What is it? Well, it was like $8 for a little thing of hummus. It was $8 for a pack of cheese. And we were like, yeah, we filled up a bag with, you know, some deli meat, some cheese, some dips, and some drinks, and they're like $8 to $10 each.
And it doesn't take a genius to see all of this, because during COVID, they were like, we're going to give you guys a $2,000 check, but we're going to give you $1 billion more to all the private entities and corporations that we're in business with. And having that much of money just printed out of thin air, those $2,000 were nothing compared to the secret corporate and banking bailouts that were given out to some of the biggest institutions in the world. Their losses were publicized. Their profits were privatized. This is a system that we're dealing with right now that isn't capitalistic. This is socialism for the super rich. Everyone else, screw yourself. And this is a big notion that I think a lot of leftists need to understand here. This is not capitalism. This is direct elitism, socialism for the super rich that are able to get away and do whatever they want while everyone else is being screwed over.
You know, the words that they use makes a big difference too, because even here, and I'll do it quite frequently, but I try not to ever refer to inflation as a CPI and prices going up. And Mises, I used to say, well, that's just semantics, just you know, qualify it or something. But Mises said, no, that's on purpose, because if the price of such and such went up, that means profits. They made too many profits. Oh, labor's going up too fast. Labor unions did that. At the same time, if we concentrate on the inflation, it's back to the money. If you dilute the money supply by printing money, that is the culprit. That's the inflation. So I try never to talk about the CPI. Oh, it showed a lot of inflation last year.
But this is a trick many leftists use. I see them say something like, the economy's not doing poorly. These corporations brought in record profits. And it's like, yes, inflation is at 15%. So if a corporation brings in, say, $10 billion more dollars, and they typically bring in $100 billion, it is just rising with inflation. That is to say, the buying power of what they brought in is the same, but the monetary number is bigger. Therefore, it's the corporation's fault for making record profits. And that's the trick they use to say, see, capitalism's the problem. These corporations are making record profits while you're suffering. No, the reason you can't buy milk, bread, and eggs is because it's $6 for a carton of eggs right now. And so that means those corporations, their costs have gone up the same, and so their profit percentage is the same, but the number is bigger because of inflation.
Yeah, talking percentages and not in finite amounts when you want to talk about profits. That's a good point.
Those are the tricks they use to be like, oh, how did they make $50 billion this year?
You know, Ron, you mentioned units of account and how our money has lost a form of account, and that gold used to be the way you would account for money. And then you said something about social account, a unit of account for social units of account. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think you have to have a value. The nihilists have a value. Truth doesn't exist. The other one is there is truth out there. And it might not be, you might not have the same definition, but in principle, all the way back to before Hammurabi wrote his code, they had an idea, and the code would define. Even back then, when it was such a primitive era, they said you should kill people. You should steal from people. And that's a higher law. It's a higher law that was known to all civilizations. And I think that you have to have that. But it's truth versus nihilism is a good way to do it. But I think it's also a higher law which has been known about and accepted on from the beginning of time, from time of Adam and Eve. It implies right and wrong, good and bad. And if you have that, you have no unit of account on social order.
So is this like social credit score, kind of like
Let's hope not.
is it like an aberration of what we're supposed to think is truth? Like truth is what they tell you it is, as opposed to truth is don't kill people.
I
don't
guess
steal.
I guess he could be, but the social credit thing, I don't want to get near that one.
I agree, and I wonder if losing touch with our unit of account from the Bible. I was never really raised in that way religiously, but I think that there's value to it. Like that, if we lose touch with that, then another form of account will come in. Like you account to the state, something like that.
I think the woke left have no moral framework. It's just power. And then the traditional Judeo-Christian values of the United States is a moral framework. So I think that's a big dividing point in the culture war. Those who, and I've said this before, Bill Maher is a great example of this. He says he's an atheist. He doesn't believe in God. But he holds all of these Christian values, such as the right presumption of innocence, which is rooted in the story of Sodom and Gomorrah, as the principal example I tend to use. But here's a guy who was raised in a society that held these values to be true. He then says, "But I don't believe I don't believe anything about a man in the sky or a resurrection or anything." And those stories are totally separate from the moral values of presumption of innocence, for example. And so he grows up, he lives a life, and he says, I don't believe those stories, but I'm going to tell you, we have to hold these values true. When people then grow up completely outside of that religion, that never even hearing the stories or any of those values, they don't recognize presumption of innocence. What do they recognize? The only thing that matters is how powerful you are and what you can take.
Mm-hmm. Very well.
I've got a burning question I wanted to ask you at the beginning of the show, Ron, and I'll ask you now. If you had the internet in 1976, before you ran for Congress, would you have started a YouTube channel instead?
I had trouble starting it in 1982 or 1992. No, I'm not in. I think about it in theory and in principle and usage and the practicality and how you get the information out. And my job, I spend most of my time, is trying to understand things. That's why I was fascinated with just the fundamentals of economic policy. If it was the Leonard Read in the Foundation for Economic Education, to me this was exciting. And I used to kid myself. I said, boy, I'm sure glad I found these people that agree with me. And of course, it was the other way around because it's been there a long time. So I think that people can find a thing. But that to me was the most interesting thing, is to search. I think once you discover that you're not going to know. We might just say we all agree on the general principles. That sounds good, having truth and non-aggression principle. But each one of us might apply it a little bit differently, because the one thing that conservatives can't do is leap over this and accept, somebody else's personal behavior. And then they want to regulate that. That means they've leaped over too far. And that means they have to use force to do that. That's why the idea of aggression has to be very, very definite.
You said something at the very beginning of the show about there being no honest people in Washington, D.C. or something to that effect. And I wanted to say this right away, but I can think of at least one. I can think of more than one, but to be fair, at least one, and that's Rand Paul, who, your son, obviously. And then you also mentioned, you had kids in college. And I think that Rand is one of the only politicians that I think is doing a good job, that actually is doing right. I think they're all far from perfect, but everyone's human. And then there's people like Thomas Massie, who I think is doing a tremendous job.
Massie's very good.
I'm wondering what your thoughts are on the current state of Congress. And obviously, I assume you think your son's doing a good job, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, once again, I don't get into the detail of that. I've over the years don't even like using their names. One time we had a little rally after they didn't allow me at the time of the election. They didn't permit me to speak at the convention, and so we had our own rally. I think where were we, in Florida?
Florida. Yeah, I was there.
Were you?
It was a great event.
Well, anyway, it was, and I think I spoke on average about an hour or so, and I did, and the crowd was just great. And I never say, oh, I gave a great speech. I say, the crowd makes your speech. It made all the difference. And so I was, just really amazed at the reception that we got there. So
It was huge. It was a stadium. There was multiple stadiums in Florida that particular year as well, and there was multiple shows and multiple people being like, "This is a representation of the people that's not being represented by the corporate media. That's not being represented by the political class." And there was so much discontent because finally we had a voice that was being heard, but it was being censored by the media. But it was being downranked everywhere, which was crazy.
well, when I finished that speech, somebody came up to me, and it might have been a friendly reporter or somebody that wasn't coming. Matter of fact, it maybe was a criticism. I didn't know it. A person came up and he says, you talked for over an hour. He says, and who were my opponents? Let's see, that was Trump.
No, I don't think that was Trump. I think that was Romney.
Romney had to,
Gingrich.
No, but who was the Democrat?
That was
2008.
That was Obama? Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Obama.
And Hillary.
And the guy come up and he says, you talked for an hour. He says, you never mentioned either of their names. You're supposed to go after your opponents. So I didn't mention the Republican or the Democrat. So I put that down on the list. Well, I think it's a distraction, and I never enjoyed it. Even though I have to admit that I've been getting pretty sloppy, and Daniel has to put up with it because what I do there's one person that does upset me, and it happens to be a woman, and that doesn't mean I don't like women. I mean, I'll tell you,
we allowed to
and
say
that's
who it is,
Nancy Pelosi.
Well, we all agree with that.
I think she's a nihilist.
Oh yeah, a narcissist, power hungry.
And if I could just ask you, throughout all of your years surrounding by all of these horrible people in Congress, do you attribute what they're doing because of malice or ignorance? Why do you think they were doing what they were doing? Why do you think they're such a cause for bad?
Let me just simplify that. Are they stupid or are they evil?
There you
Yes.
go. There, that's better.
Yes.
Both?
I think that the problem that I look at is intellectual and philosophic. We started a conversation with talking about 1913. I said even a little earlier. I think people are influenced by that type of thing, and the control of the scenario, the control of the propaganda is the real problem. Now the individuals, they're sloppy. They're not well informed. I had people come up, some liberal Democrats, when I first went there in the 70s, they come up and say, I can't figure out what you're doing. Why are you voting with this guy over here? And I just sort of laugh because I got a charge out of it. But no, I think that's where we're making progress. I think people are. That's why I love to see young people talking about these issues.
So you think that
I think most of people don't know how much influence they have, because I certainly don't believe some of the things people tell me about. Oh, you did this and you did that. But if people, all you have to do is to have a small group. If you have 10 people, you're even denied the information. You'll never know. Well, how many people watch the show?
we probably have 50,000 or more right now.
But you don't know what that 50,000 might do in the next 10 years.
Well, one thing
That's the way things change.
And I'll say this to you, and one thing I've only realized, maybe like a year ago, is people tell us when they're watching, they're actually watching with 3 or 4 other people. So it says one, but it's actually a family or it's a group of friends who are hanging out. But I'll say this to you, Dr. Paul and Congressman, I don't know if I would be here right now if you were not doing what you were doing, throughout your entire career. The things that I started learning online, the speeches that I saw from you had a tremendous influence. And I think Luke, obviously the same thing. He's at your rallies. So you may get started with this one idea, and as you mentioned, you tell the 10 people. Those 10 people tell 10 more. Those 10 people tell 10 more. And before you know it, 30 years goes by and you're sitting on some dude's podcast who's like, remember that one thing you said about the wrong prescription for war? And you're like, oh, did I say that? Like, I had a huge impact on my view of a lot of this stuff too. So I think, there's probably a lot of people out there right now who hear even this show and we don't even realize.
Okay, I always, in more private conversations when we get into these talks like this, I always want to know more about where you were, why you changed, what happens, and I don't do it for you to say nice things about me, but what was it that caught your attention? Mine is a bit more complex. I narrowed down the monetary issue, but do you remember what it was that it got your attention?
I voted for Obama in 2008. I had seen a lot of things on the internet. I had a lot of friends. I had heard about you. I had seen the revolution stickers and things like that. I think that was around that time. It's been a long time. But I remember Barack Obama was supposedly going to be the anti-war guy. That the Bush era was completely wrong. People were marching through the streets saying he was Hitler. And then I'm this young kid, and I'm listening to punk rock music. War is bad. War is wrong. Blah blah blah. And I agree. I'm like, I don't understand why we keep hearing these stories about civilians being killed. I don't understand. And I research it and I learn about it. And I start to understand the history, and I read about, Desert Storm and things like that. I was a lot younger. I read about the Cold War. And then I say, I don't trust the government. Barack Obama is supposedly going to be hope and change. And I'm young and naive. And people tell me, you got to understand, he's an insurgent candidate. He's not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be Hillary. She's the establishment. Vote for Obama. And I'm like, wow, is this really the change? And you know what? One of the first things Obama does when he gets into office is he bombs a village of women and children with a drone strike, or I think it might have been an airstrike or something like that, under the guise of terrorist hunting. And I was like, okay, well that's weird, but maybe that was from the old administration. Like, I'm going to give him a chance. And then he surged our troops in Afghanistan. And then I just got really jaded and angry and was just like, so they lied to me the whole time.
Sounds to me like the war issue was a big issue for you.
Yeah, absolutely. No. And of course, then everything you had been saying about the war was, I started asking myself, why is it that it's this Republican candidate who is preaching against war, who's still preaching against war, who has now, I can see, has the track record of actually caring about these issues. And then I started to see the hypocrisy in these other liberal and Democrat voters who told me they opposed the war, but the moment Barack Obama got elected, they stopped caring. And I was like, you lied to me. That put a chip on my shoulder, and I got deeply offended and distrustful of these people. And not to mention, I never liked Republicans as it was. So what I ended up seeing was more of, I've never considered myself like a right-leaning libertarian or a conservative. I remember seeing you give certain speeches where I was like, well, I don't agree with that. But the one thing I always said, and I think the Mises Caucus actually quoted me and they made a little graphic, was, I thought to myself, this guy Ron Paul is saying, here's what I believe, but you know what? I think the government should leave you all alone. And I thought to myself, well, okay, I can vote for that. He can believe whatever he wants as long as he leaves me alone, right? And so that was a big factor in, I would consider myself kind of like a centrist libertarian type, more, like more freedom, less government, a little bit of government. I'm not an anarchist or anything like that. But I think the Obama being a liar thing, and it was kind of like they spat on me. They lied to me, they insulted me, and I just don't trust them. And I see you consistent. I see, and I was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter in 2015 and 16 for a similar reason. He was more what I thought of as the left-wing version of you, anti-war, pro-worker, all these things. Sure enough, that was another lie. He ends up just catering straight to the establishment the moment they tell him to, makes $1 million selling a book, and then says, you can be a millionaire if you write a book too. And I'm like, was all of that a lie too? I gotta be honest, I just don't like any of these politicians. But you seem to have retired with grace and dignity and remain consistent on all your positions. Then your son is in there doing great work as well, and I'm like, these are the only few politicians I actually think have ever meant it, to be honest.
Did they ever try to buy you off? Did they ever try to silence you or stop you?
No, they always insulted me. They never came to see me.
You think that if you...
No, the lobbyists didn't come. Did they come to our office?
One time and you kicked them out.
I didn't.
You listened to him first.
If you become president in 2008, do you think that they would have been like, here's who you're going to bomb next, and if you were like, no, that they would have JFK'd you?
Well, that's hard to say, but if you did more than that, if you really changed things, there'd be a revolution. That, for some reason, whether they kill you or what, but anybody that supported it, it would be done. it's not going to happen. That's why we have to expect the collapse to come in a different way. We can't get enough people in Congress to pass the right law to really change things. It's good that we have there, and we have a few more now than we did before, with the recent election. But it would be catastrophic if you really change it. If you can't close down the Fed. The Fed has to close themselves down.
Yeah, you mentioned auditing the Fed at the time. It was like 2009 or 10 or 11 or something. You were talking about auditing the Fed, and I kept thinking, no, repeal the Federal Reserve Act of 1913, repeal it. But now what you're saying is that would pull the rug out.
Yeah, well, I want to repeal it. I've had bills in to repeal it. It's just that I had a lot of Democrats sign on to auditing the Fed, and all the Republicans. But they wouldn't have. I wouldn't have gotten 5 votes to abolish the Fed.
There's a famous
Well,
video.
it was a practical. It became pragmatic, but it was also, to me, educational, because I was surprised we did that.
Why won't they vote for auditing the Fed? What's their? Are lobbyists coming at them? Are their lives threatened?
Well, because that money is being distributed secretly.
Yeah.
It's a big privilege. I think that. Where was it? I read. I think it was $31 trillion they passed out over COVID, but it's off the books. I mean, they don't go through Congress, to appropriate this money. It is, and they don't want that to be revealed. That's why I said the thing they want to protect the most are the international transactions. That's where they wheel and deal, and keep the bank international settlements. That's probably do a lot of the wheeling and dealing.
And the bailouts are secret. A lot of the money is being moved around. No one even knows exactly where it's going, who it's going to. I confronted Ben Bernanke about this issue. The guy tried to steal my microphone from me because I was like, where's the money going to? How much money are you giving people? And this was all the way back in 2011.
But the good news is the market is more powerful than the politicians, and that is why Bretton Woods broke down. That's why Henry Hazlitt was right. All through the 60s were right, and the people said, it won't work, and finally it didn't work. And that's why the same people are saying the dollar is going to get much, much weaker, and it will lose its reserve It's a reserve credentials.
What do you think is like a cogent move forward to try and bring it into a slow landing, soft landing, as soft as we can?
You can't do that. But because the time has passed, the best example to know what we could have done and should have done is 1921, because there was a very serious depression in 21, and I guess Hoover was still in, but the Keynesianism hadn't taken over, and they just you didn't bail people out, it's bad debt, liquidate the debt and get it over with. So they did nothing, and after a little over a year, the GDP, I think, went down like 15%. And then everybody, had to go back to scratch, and after that, everything was growth. The markets were growing again, and you could have done that. And you could do it now, but politically it wouldn't be acceptable.
So start businesses in the private sector?
What?
If we were going to do it like a soft landing or something, it would be like by creating productivity, but not waiting for the politicians?
Well, that's why the market is important. I think that you could, if you took all of the dumb economic things that Biden has done, especially in energy, blowing up pipelines, and, doing all that nonsense and more regulation, if you remove that, that would be helpful. That would increase productivity and lower prices. But the debt is too big. That is going to haunt us, and people worry, rightfully so, that the debt will be liquidated, and they are going to default. But the default comes because the debt is shrinking right now because of the money is worth so little, and they can't quit doing that. They even talk about raising interest rates right now each day. If they say one word to hint that, well, interest rates are going to go up a little bit, the market's got out $1 trillion. It's just crazy.
All right.
It's beyond repair.
We're going to go to Super Chats. So if you haven't already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends, and become a member at timcast.com. Head over to timcast.com, click join us. Become a member, because we're going to have an uncensored members-only show coming up at about 10 p.m. Eastern Time, where we're even going to take audience questions. And I believe in this segment, we'll try and focus on cultural issues that are currently happening today, which I really want to ask about, especially in a medical context. I think some of you may understand where I'm going with that, so we'll save that one for the not so family friendly after show. And in the meantime, let's read your super chats. So we have this one from Raymond G. Stanley Jr. He says, Ron, sir, thanks for coming. I literally just left my first Libertarian Party regional meeting thanks to Decord. These folks are legit. 4 are running for local office, others doing work. I was quite impressed, sir. You're about to get up?
Or you hit the bathroom?
Was that a question directed?
No, just
I didn't hear.
someone was just saying that they one of our audience members saying that the Libertarian Party is legit, and they thank you for coming.
Oh yeah, if you got to.
Tell me what the schedule's like. Are
We got about 30 minutes. We're gonna do super chats with the audience.
okay?
Audience questions?
I'm going.
Yeah. Hop on out. No problem. We'll read some super chats and do your thing. All right. Chris O says Ron Paul is the most principled, inspirational political figure of my lifetime. Thank you for everything, Dr. Paul, and thanks to Tim for having him on. I think thank you to Dr. Paul and Daniel for coming. I mean, this is it's an honor and a privilege. One thing I wanted to add too, just in this context, when Dr. Paul asked me about like what mattered to me, is I want to stress that I was very much in the generic pro-choice camp when I was younger. And then I heard Dr. Paul talk about life beginning at conception, explaining it and giving his reasoning, and that changed my view. I wouldn't say that I became pro-life or anything like that, but I immediately was like, interesting. I understand now what he's saying in terms of the pro-life context, life beginning at conception. He's a doctor, he would know. I respect that argument, and it changed my views, and it pulled me back closer. I would say when I was younger, it was very much like, who cares? Abort the baby, like what, punk rock. And then I was kind of like, we should probably have some limitations on this thing. And so it definitely made me, because when I was younger, I was probably far left, anarcho-leftist, whatever that means. And then as I got older, I became more centrist libertarian type, and I think Ron Paul played a role in that for sure.
Well, he tells a powerful story when he first started. He was in residency, and he would tell it better than I would, but just as an example, that there was an abortion that survived, and the baby was lying in the corner of the room, and everyone just was pretending that it wasn't there as the baby gasped for air, because the point was that baby was supposed to be aborted, and he didn't have a real strong view necessarily until that experience. And I think it really, and it was, I think, in the one book that he wrote about abortion, it really affected him. So if you're against violence, that literally is an act of violence,
And personally, I just never liked the government. I don't know about you guys, but never saw them as
the government.
Everyone's calling you Daniel McBased in the comments, by the way.
All right. Kite the Twin Blade says, it's happening. It is indeed. It is indeed happening.
Yeah, everyone's mentioning the meme.
Yeah.
So.
Liam McCollum says, Dave Smith 2024, so Ron Paul can be the last Federal Reserve chairman ever.
Would you accept a chairmanship at the Federal Reserve if you were nominated?
They never saw you coming. That's about the last thing that would ever happen.
Enemy there.
Well,
Would
so
I accept? Yeah, as long as they use my rules. My first goal would be to close shop.
well, that's the point.
Are you familiar with Dave Smith?
Oh, I'm gonna grab the mic.
Yeah. He grabbed the mic too. If you're talking about the mic.
Okay.
Yeah, the super chat was about
I thought
Dave
you were
Smith.
tired listening to me.
Oh no, never.
About Dave Smith becoming president and nominating you for the Federal Reserve chair.
Yeah. Do you know Dave Smith?
Yeah.
He may be the 2024 Libertarian candidate. I'd hope so. I know, we'll see. But someone asked, if he wins, would you accept an appointment to chair the Federal Reserve?
Oh, I would, but it wouldn't be living in the practical world.
It would be shutting it down.
Yeah.
I think we can accept that. All right. Grim Metal says, you woke me up in 2007, Dr. Paul. Thank you so much. My entire metals business that is thriving is all because of you. Look at that. All right. What do we have here? Frump says, as an older millennial, I voted for you, wrote you in, and adored your view on what we can be. I appreciate Rand and his views. He's a solid guy. Please stay with us. We need another 23 plus years. Well, all right. Cloudroth says, Ron Paul makes me proud to be an American. Man, It is. I think I mentioned this before, but as you were talking about, you maybe say something to 10 people, but then as time goes on, those ideas ripple outward. I don't know if you're aware of just how many millions or even tens of millions of people are where they are politically, economically, because of the work you did and how profound that was for so many people.
No, but that might be exaggerated a little bit. but we don't know that. I'm fascinated with the concept of the remnant. And I would say that the people that are in this meeting here tonight really look much like they're dealing with retaining and maintaining the beliefs in liberty, and you become a remnant. And I've heard a little bit of disagreement, but I heard people in this room that wanted to just hear the plain truth of things.
Well,
and then that's, to me, the wonderful thing. And so you don't know, we don't know, well, you might know, you have the numbers, how many people listen, but you don't know how many people they talk to the next day. So that's what's so miraculous about it. And I think it's wonderful. Somebody asked me one time that, after having been up there, how did you ever put up with it? It's so disgusting. And I said, well, I'll tell you what, it never bothered me because, obviously my goal was not to be, become a congressman or the chairman of the Federal Reserve. I said, so I just, I did what I thought I could do and in my own way, but I had low expectations, and so I tolerated it quite well.
Gormal says, thank you, Dr. Paul, for everything you've done and raising a remarkable son. I would love to hear your opinion on national divorce.
National divorce. This is to separate the good guys from the bad guys, huh? Well, I don't know, exactly what all the details would be. All I want is freedom of choice. And right now, the founders are rather astute in providing for us a way that we can move around. And if you didn't like one state, you could move around. But no, I'd like the unit of government always to be permitted. And I think the most important unit of government that we should have is the individual. Self-government is what we need, and then the person is totally responsible for everything he or she does, and you have to accept the consequence. But I think the other principle in this that you have to look for is the principle of private property rights, owning property. If you know that it's your property and they're not supposed to mess with it, and if you're not allowed to mess with your neighbor's property, then we have to accept the expansion of that, which we don't do very often in Washington, is that if you can't do it, if you can't steal from your neighbor, you're not allowed to send the government there. You call the congressman. I'll get that from him. He has too much stuff, so we'll get it. So the couple of principles would. So just those principles aren't complex, and I think a lot of people. Yeah, that makes sense. I always the compliment I like the best is this. Why I like to listen to you. It makes common sense. That's good. If it is, it's not too complex, and the direction we go in. Otherwise, if you want to get the Keynesian mathematical formula out and say, well, if we do A, B, C, you can get this, and we can, all that nonsense. They go, no, that doesn't work. That'll put you to sleep for sure.
What do we have here? A free-thinking dog says, how do we get libertarians and conservatives to align today? Together we would be unbeatable, but we need to get libertarians back to some sanity.
I would say the opposite of that. We need to get the other party back to some sanity and stop trying to bomb people. I think the Bush years had tremendous damage to the Republican Party and the Conservative Party, especially with all the wars that they have started. They had the seat at the table. They had the Congress, they had the Senate, they had the Supreme Court, they had everything, and they decided to go with pointless wars. Why would people trust that? They don't trust that, and this is what caused Obama to be as powerful as it is. This is what caused the kind of woke movement to be where it is right now, a direct pushback against the conservatives, sitting at the table, and then I would, frankly say, pooping all over it.
I thought your work was an example of bridging the gap between libertarianism and the Republican Party. Do you see, well, one, I guess, do you see a lot of cohesiveness between the two, or would you like to?
Oh, I would like to, but I'm not sure it's going to be all of a sudden a reformation and the Republicans changing their tune. Because right now, the thing that's fascinated me about bringing people together is the fact that I'm disappointed that the traditional progressive Democrat that was an ally when I was in Congress, the Dennis Kuciniches, we'd work together and try to make the point of the stupidity of the wars in the Middle East. And I got more support from Democrats because Bush was in there. So it was political, it was short-sighted. So that is... one thing that we could do is, if the progressives are moving away, they're acting more like hawks. They're joining the Republican hawks, but at the same time, the Republicans are improving. Now they have a little group up there that got together with a remnant of the progressive Democrats, and they were able to persuade people that it's time we have to think about no more money to Ukraine. So that's a start. The problem there is our practical problem that Daniel and I have to deal with. Yeah, that's all good, but so often when we find somebody, oh yeah, they want to do this, and we're doing too much there. What they want to do is for you to build up the hatred toward China. Oh, we'd rather fight China. That wears me out.
Yeah, we did an episode of the Ron Paul Liberty Report. I think it was last week about this. There was a Politico story about how Speaker McCarthy is getting very nervous because he's got a breakaway group of Republicans who are willing to get together with progressives who are breaking away from their party. And the reason why it's important is because there's a lot of leverage there. McCarthy can only afford to lose 4 votes on anything. So if you've got 10 people, we saw all the people that were holding up his taking the chair. If you've got 10 or 15 people, and they will line up with 3 or 4 on the progressive side, you literally have a third party in Congress right now that has enormous stopping power. And it's our sincere hope that they realize the power they have. One of the things that they coalesced on is ending the authorization for the Iraq War, and that's an easy one. So start with the easy things like that and realize how much power a group of 10 people can have in this kind of a close Congress. I mean, that's one of the few areas I think for optimism.
Jim O'Brien says, "What are the pronouns on the black shirt?"
Told you so.
Oh, those are good. Those are good ones.
Yeah, that's on my shirt saying that I identify as a conspiracy theorist.
Oh, okay. Infernal Saxon says, "Could a state government audit the Fed?"
State government.
Yeah.
Well, the state governments are doing good jobs. They've gotten together. I have visited some of their legislative bodies, and it's neat because they're taking the Constitution literally, and they're saying only legal tender the states allowed to use is gold and silver. So they're they don't have to ask the federal government about this. They're just. And it's really pretty neat. It's a good teaching device. We're not going to have magic and change it, but this is the kind of thing that I think gets people's attention. Somebody might say, I wonder why the founders put that in there. How would we have a Federal Reserve? Well, maybe we don't need a Federal Reserve. So, but there's about 6 states or so that have worked on this. And I'd like to see the states really move in that direction. So we encourage that a whole lot to argue the case for the states to do something.
Right on. Heron Gaming News says, "One thing is clear, I'm bringing marshmallows and toasting them over the dumpster fire the establishment gave us. Luke is a statist." I missed you, Luke.
How dare you call me that? If there's one offensive thing you can call me, it is that. I am highly offended, triggered. Statist? Seriously?
All right, let's see. Winston Alexander says, "Ian, AI drones to pacify the military-industrial complex? WTF? Why not direct the military-industrial complex into something productive like space stations or spaceships?"
I'm down to do that too. So what I would want to do is build drone swarms and then put onboard artificial intelligence on the drone swarms, but don't give the swarms weapons. Just give them like sensor targeting things so they can swarm us, target our weaknesses, and then give us what we did wrong and tell us how to get better at destroying them. Because drone swarms is the next stage of war.
But Ian's right. There's videos talking about the drone swarm developments they've been working on in warfare, where they can unleash like 100,000 drones that can they don't need a nuke. They just get these drones to all crash into a city in perfect synchronicity, targeting the key point. It's crazy precision. But I would argue maybe we just get government contracts for assembly drones. where the drones in outer space build things.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Yeah, you can have like 100 trillion drones in space all working in synergy to build. Size almost becomes irrelevant when you're building in space. You'll be able to build planetary-sized
Dyson
things.
spheres. Just build a Dyson sphere.
Space exploration. Can we do a little bit of that, maybe?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm down for
Yeah,
that.
that,
That'd be
sounds a lot
great. Well,
better than bombing and killing people.
Yes, Starship's launching soon. Elon Musk's Starship. So
Get him on the show. He's in Austin, isn't he?
Is he?
Give him a
I
ring.
might DM him.
Yeah, hit him up.
Hit him up. Tell him to come on the show. We'll talk about Twitter. All right, let's grab some more. Heron Gaming News says, Luke, can anarchy save us, or will the feds be benevolent rulers?
I don't have I don't
globe?
have
You remember that?
Yes.
With Korean champion?
yes. I can't predict the future, but I know if people follow the principles of the non-aggression principle and voluntarism and become personally responsible for themselves, no matter what happens, they will be ready for whatever comes and more prepared for it, and in a lot better situation than if they weren't. So I think those two ideas that you guys represent so well and speak about for so many years are critical at this juncture where things are very crazy. They're only going to get a lot crazier from here, and more than ever, we need to take care of ourselves and our communities. And I think if we go along those lines, we're going to be ready for whatever comes next.
Wow. Hequibus says, Tim, eggs are $10 for a dozen in California. Meanwhile, at the castle, we've got like 200 eggs. It's in because we have chickens. We have like 30 of them. So we get, we're getting like 27 eggs per day, some ridiculous number.
Do you have a farm, Ron?
Not really. I have a couple of acres. I was raised in a way a chicken farm and a dairy, and I decided that I wouldn't raise chickens at this particular time. Have a couple cows, but I have a nice place, and once again, it's back to my so-called optimism that I just haven't run into a lot of ugly people. Meanness. I know they're out there, and I suffer their consequences. But no, our family feels very fortunate that I've been able to practice medicine, and we have few problems, and it's been rather nice. But I'm not a farmer.
You would agree though that chickens are pretty cool.
I don't know. I think they're sometimes pretty dirty.
Yeah, they're nasty little poopers. But I think chickens are great.
Can't beat the eggs, man.
Fresh eggs for breakfast, man. It's, oof. And we had a garden, so we would pluck the cherry tomatoes. I'd grab some zucchini, and then I'd make my own breakfast right there from my own garden.
Murray Rothbard used to say, well, he says he believes in the division of labor, and I do too. So you raise the chickens, and I'm going to save my silver dollars and my gold coins, and so I can buy some eggs from you.
All right, let's see. What do we got? Callum Dimmick says you should talk about the similarities between the Tennessee legislature bringing back the senators they kicked out with the caning of Senator Summer right before the first American Civil War, i.e. hit him again. Well, I don't think it's the same thing. I mean, the pre-Civil War caning was merciless brutality, which left the guy permanently disabled, depending on who you ask, I suppose. And what we have now is a guy threw a hot coffee, was arrested for throwing hot coffee 4 years ago, and then was permanently banned from the Capitol, later got elected as a Democrat and brought into the Capitol. Then he joined the protesters to storm the Capitol, so he got kicked out, and then got reinstated by Democrats to go back to the Capitol just recently. So I wouldn't call it a caning. There are similarities in that there's a division between both sides, but I don't know. When was the last time there was an expulsion in this matter? It's been a long time, I'm pretty sure.
Trafficant.
What is that?
Probably trafficant in the U.S. House.
James Trafficant, Congress member.
When was that?
I was there at the time, so
05, 06.
Wow.
What brought that about?
His story, Congressman's trafficant story is crazy. Yeah, extraordinary is absolutely wonderful. If you don't know about that man, I interviewed him.
Elevator pitch?
I interviewed him before, and I'm still shocked.
Yeah, what happened?
Do you want to take this, Daniel?
Well, you probably know the details better than I do, but it seems like he was JFK too.
Yeah.
Big time.
What was he
I
trying?
remember going to the House floor for him.
Yeah, everyone voted no. I mean, everyone voted to expel. Lauderette voted not to expel, and you voted present because you objected to the entire process. So it was ugly.
Garbage.
It was ugly.
It's just like an emotional thing. People were trying. What were they throwing him out for?
They claimed that he had some staffers paint his boat. But what they're really throwing him out for is because he showed that the emperor had no clothes, that the whole system, you know, he was famous for going down to the floor and give 1-minute speeches that he ended with "Beam me up, Scotty," you know, and so he had.
He's really a neat guy.
Yeah. he had contempt and disdain for all the hypocrisy in Washington.
And he passed away.
He never sat with the Democrats.
No,
And he passed away from an accident. Again,
tractor accident.
Tractor accident.
He was independent.
Yeah,
True independent.
you can see my interview with him on We Are Change. Maybe you'll be able to find it if you look up James Trafficant, We Are Change. But crazy story.
All right. Ronwell Nagales says, nice meeting you in person. Thanks for taking a picture with me and signed my book last February. I had a child star who I'm a huge fan of, gave me the confidence I need to meet you. You're my hero, and I would have voted for you for president in 2012.
That's very nice.
Yeah. All right. They Eddie says, in 07, when I was 17 and scared ishless by Alex Jones's Endgame, Dr. Paul was the only politician we were told we could trust. I supported his family only until Trump. Still very grateful for Paul's.
Yeah, I love Rand, man. You guys are so different, but it almost like freaks me out that you're related. I love it. Like, I want to see you together talking. Just like,
Yeah, I think he does a very good job. And I'm pretty critical of myself. So sometimes I sit there and I say, he's better than I am at this stuff here. He gives a good speech.
Yeah.
He's very, very knowledgeable on the COVID business.
The confrontation with Fauci is something for the history books. Yeah. Here's a good one. Anwar Abu Baker says there's a Ron Paul Revolution billboard still on the highway between Nevada and California from Dr. Paul's last presidential campaign. Wow.
Who sees it when they're leaving California or going to California?
Yeah, that's a good question. Maybe when they're leaving and then they can think about it. Maybe they're leaving for a reason, you know? Or maybe they should see it before they get there, to be honest.
Yeah.
Turn around. All right, what do we got here? Phil H. says, libertarians have gained a lot of ground with Republicans. Can the same be done with Democrats, or are they too far gone? Well, my view is that Democrats believe incorrect things too much. There are certainly conservatives who believe incorrect things, but for the most part, when I have a conversation with somebody as it pertains to Ukraine or economics or anything, they're just like, I don't know. What they know is what the New York Times just said last night. And that's probably why they don't like coming on shows like this, where we will pull up all of the stories and they'll have to confront those issues. They don't want to do it. So, all right. Let's see. We'll grab a couple more. Where are we at? Corn Bop says, Graph Ian, Bud Light, Graphene, make the shirts, Luke. I don't know.
I don't know if that one will do well.
I don't know if Luke could make a shirt for Ian, a Graph Ian shirt.
I think that's a Ian shirt. Yeah.
my blessing.
Ian
You're
shirt?
welcome to. But yeah, I'll do it.
We'll donate it to the Graphene Fund.
I don't understand the shirt that he's saying, though. Graphene, Bud Light, Graphene.
I don't know. Yeah. All right. Frump says, Ron superseding Ian in the 20 throws. Luke, stop throwing 20s.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
That's a dungeon. You ever played Dungeons and Dragons?
The what?
Have you played Dungeons and Dragons, a board game? You roll
No.
dice to do things in the game. And if you roll a 20, that means you get a critical success. So this guy said you got more critical successes.
I'm not into those kind of games.
You're not a gamer?
I go to Congress instead.
Yeah.
I play games over there.
Yes.
All right. Kite the Twin Blade says, Dr. Paul, thank you for being you. You turned me from a rabid neocon in 2007 into a right libertarian. I found real, nonviolent solutions when none were offered by the Republicans. I completely agree. I think that's absolutely how at least a lot of people I know felt. It is fascinating to hear now we have Republicans come on the show, and Luke will say something like, we've been warning you about the FBI and the ATF and the CIA and the intelligence agencies for a decade, and then you'll get these prominent conservatives going, yeah, you were right the whole time, we screwed up. And that's an amazing thing to see. I think it's great.
Yeah, who knew destroying the Constitution was a bad idea? Who knew destroying people's civil liberties and freedom of speech and the Fourth Amendment and on and on and on was a bad idea? A lot of people saw it. You warned people about 40 years ago. There's a video of you 40 years ago warning about the FBI. It's going viral right now all over Twitter. Glenn Greenwald just tweeted it out. But I've been seeing that video for a very long time. You warning us about the FBI, and you were absolutely right on the money. And the situation we're in now is just absurd.
For sure.
All right, everybody, if you have not already, would you kindly smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, share the show with your friends if you think it's really good, and head over to timcast.com, click join us to become a member. We're going to have a
Listen to this real quick while I'm playing.
One of the biggest upgrades to Ethereum is about to take place. It's called ETH Shanghai, and we're going to talk today about why everyone is wrong about what's about to happen. You see, the biggest change about ETH Shanghai is that people will now be able to unstake their staked ETH. If you remember, over the last few years, people have been staking their Ethereum into ETH2 staking. The problem with that is that they haven't been able to unstake that ETH, and this led to the rise of liquid staking derivatives protocols such as Lido. Now, what Lido and other such protocols allow for is for people to receive a token when they stake their ETH called STETH. This effectively will allow you to claim some of that staked ETH when the staking pools do unlock. So effectively, the people who have staked into ETH2 have something that they can trade, but there have been instances where the staked ETH trades at a huge discount from normal ETH. The big question is, should we all be frightened as Ethereum and Bitcoin have rallied up here into a week full of catalysts? We have a lot to talk about, so let's jump in. So first of all, what are we talking about here? The Shanghai update, scheduled for April 12th, that is tomorrow, will allow for validators to withdraw funds that have been locked to secure the network since December 2020. That is a very long time indeed. The upgrade will complete the network's transition to proof of stake, which started October 2022 with the merge. It's called the Chapella upgrade because there's the Capella upgrade mixed with the Shanghai upgrade, and they just mashed them together, calling it Chapella. Yes, I know, a lot of 500 IQ creativity over here in crypto land. Now, taking a wee look-see here over the ETH BTC chart, this shows how Ethereum is trading against Bitcoin. You can see that there's been a major de-risking here, and this is usually an interesting sign. Now, this could mean that traders believe that Ethereum's Shanghai Chapella upgrade is going to trigger a mass flood of Ethereum onto the markets. You see, that's the big dystopian case here, is that everyone unstakes their Ethereum that they've been waiting to unstake for years and years and years since the beginning of the last bull run, and they finally have the chance to sell that ETH. Thank goodness. But that doesn't really make that much sense, and we'll talk about why that is very soon. You see, what I found is that the price action leading up to major catalysts tends to be the opposite of what that catalyst will do. For example, a sell the news event would be price rallying up into that catalyst, and then people sell en masse when that catalyst occurs. In this case, although the USD price is up, price is largely lagging way behind Bitcoin in anticipation of this upgrade. I think at this time, it's time to talk brass tacks. How will this affect the price? And if you think about it, this is not nearly as bearish as people are trying to lead you on to believe. You see, yes, a lot of these people can unstake and now sell that ETH, but what are the types of people that were staking their ETH into this ETH 2.0 proof of stake system years in advance? These are true believers, long-term believers in the future of Ethereum, and often some of the biggest wallets in the ecosystem. They're not just going to rush to sell because their staking is now available to withdraw. Bear in mind, Ethereum's only trading about 50% off its highs, a little bit more than 50% actually. It's really not all that doom and gloom in ETH town. More importantly, and let's get to the crux of the issue, the ability to now withdraw your funds will actually make a lot more people willing to stake their ETH into the protocol. You see, if you knew you could stake your Ethereum for a 5% yield, but that yield came with the catch that you had literally no idea when you'd be able to withdraw your funds, withdraw your ETH, and that you'd effectively be stuck there indefinitely, well, that would add a little wrinkle to your desire to stake that Ethereum. And to give you a sense of scale here, look at how Ethereum compares to literally every other L1 chain, with BNB having over 90% staking participation, ADA at 72, Sol at 68, AVAX at 62, DOT at 46, and ETH here at a measly 14% staking ratio. That means pretty much no one stakes their ETH. And that's of course because of this phenomenon. You really don't know when you can get it out. So it's kind of like a one-way stake. It's less about staking at this point, and it's more about blind faith in the Ethereum ecosystem. And we all know blind faith doesn't run too deep in the crypto waters. You see, the ability to withdraw your ETH will actually probably attract way more staking attention,
like the only
way
game
more
I want to
staking
play right now
participation
because
than
I can
had been
control the
previously the
outcome
case. It's hard to imagine that this Ethereum
more than a lot
percentage
of other
doesn't become
games.
far more competitive with other L1 competitors over time as
Yeah,
far
like
as staking
Overwatch,
percentage.
but-
I mean, why wouldn't you want to make a little bit of native yield with zero counterparty risk, ETH on ETH rewards? And this is because when you stake ETH, you're actually helping secure the network. You're adding to the security of the proof of stake consensus mechanism. This isn't some opaque yield or some Ponzi. This is literally naturally occurring ETH that gets emitted by the network as a way to pay validators to secure and validate transactions. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that ETH is inflationary either, because thanks to EIP 1559, we now have a deflationary mechanism where a little bit of ETH is burned with each transaction. You see, it's a beautiful harmony where stakers earn a little bit of ETH, and the people who are transacting burn a little bit of ETH. And I'm certainly not the only one who thinks this way. As Gamachin says here, it's so obvious that people aren't going to dump their Shanghai ETH. Why do I see 10 threads each day trying to convince me that they won't? Apparently, the Mental Gymnastics Olympics are held this year in Shanghai. As Chris says here, Shanghai de-risks Ethereum staking. Expect the percent of ETH staked to 2 to 4x in the quarters following it. Those are bullish flows, not bearish. For those who are very interested, there's also a mathematics equation that stops this onslaught of staking withdrawals. So it's not like everyone can withdraw and sell all at once. That's not mathematically possible given the way that this upgrade is framed. Though I don't really believe that's going to be a huge issue personally. As Fabian says here, the limit is around 50,000 Ethereum a day, which is why I think the worst of the Shanghai was actually from the de-risking going into it, reflected in the ETH BTC ratio. As you can see, ETH BTC has taken a major beating here, down about 7% over the last few days. As Mr. Ran of Crypto Banter says, ETH Shanghai tomorrow. Here's what I'm expecting the next few weeks. 1, staking withdrawals slower than expected. I agree with this. LSD protocols drop as people realize the main reason people use them was for the token liquidity. This one is less clear to me, but we'll see what happens with LSD products like Lido and other such protocols. And 3, ETH runs. Alt season starts. ETH BTC up. BTC DOM down. Now this I would absolutely love to see, as alt season is literally the most fun season of them all. Listen to me clearly. Every single indicator has pointed to that we are repeating history right now on the 4-year cycle. Could we be wrong? Yes. But in my opinion, the risk of believing that this isn't happening is so much greater than the risk of taking some chance on volatility. Everyone's looking at altcoins that are down bad, battered and bruised from the last cycle. You know what I'm talking about. And if you are not understanding that buying stuff in the off season before people are hyped about it, before it's up only, is the way to get ahead and stay ahead of crypto, then you haven't paid attention to any of the content I've made here on this channel for years. You want to buy when others are scared. You want to buy before the noise heats up. And quite frankly, if you haven't been taking advantage of the low prices in some of these coins, whether or not we plunge down to new lows, I believe that the levels we're at will eventually be surpassed, not just by a little bit, but by orders of magnitude on the next bull run. That's why I'm starting to add to my positions altcoins, Bitcoin, and the projects that I think are going to truly thrive next run. So what's going to happen with ETH Shanghai update? I think this take from Ansem sums it up. Overall, I don't think it's bullish or bearish. Yeah, people can unstake, but most of that cohort are super long-term bull ETH, so don't expect that much selling short-term. ETH is upgrading once again. Besides Bitcoin, this is the biggest protocol in the world. We're seeing consistent growth, consistent evolution, and with another smooth upgrade to ETH Shanghai, the Chapella upgrade, we'll now have seen a multitude of massive changes, smooth as silk from the Ethereum Foundation and the Ethereum blockchain. This is extremely bullish for the future of the world computer that is Ethereum. We're seeing an explosion of L2s surrounding the Ethereum protocol that make fast and low-fee transactions a reality. I believe the entire ETH ecosystem is going to benefit from this. I believe ETH as an asset is made all that much more interesting by having a staking protocol you can easily deposit and withdraw to without the insane commitment of forever staking. Let me know what you guys think about this. I'm bullish on ETH taking some of the lead and spreading some of that love to the altcoins. As you guys know, I'm here to make an absolute astronomical amount of money on the next bull run, and if you guys are with me in that, go ahead, leave me a comment in the comment section below. Tell me your favorite projects, because I believe right now is the time to start sniffing around and sizing up the next big narratives to run. I'm a big believer in gaming. I'm a big believer in scaling. I'm a big believer in...
Another one down. Good shooting, Spartan. Power weapons on the field.
Finish. first beatdown should have connected.
Minutes remaining.
Grab the sniper.
Enemy team nearing victory.
Power items on the field.
We've lost a teammate. Enemy overkill. Down there.
Multiple hostiles.
Head down.
Down there.
Good shooting, Spartan. Power weapons en route.
Oh,
Defeat.
all right. I'm not listening to anything. I'm trying to get some wins.
I'll take that. Enemy Spartans are closing in.
They have our flag. Take it back. We have eyes on the enemy flag carrier. Hurry the flag back to base. You're exposed, Spartan. Enemy flag carrier spotted. They know where you are.
Down. Flag return. No scope.
Power items en route.
Flag captured. Flag returned.
Spartan down. Power items on the field. I see headshots in your future. They've taken our flag. Look there, an enemy flag carrier.
Enemy captured your flag.
Enemy flags in Allied hands.
Closing in.
Yeah.
Enemy flag returned.
Power items en route. They'll think twice next time.
Double kill.
A fitting commendation. Power items have arrived.
Shoot to that.
They've taken our flag. We have eyes on the enemy flag carrier.
Enemy has an S7 sniper!
Tango's closing in.
I see headshots in your future. The enemy carrier has revealed themselves.
Enemy is below us!
your flag. We've lost a teammate.
Plasma grenades acquired.
Stay mobile.
Power items en route.
Off their shield.
Power items on the field.
Come on, that's a fucking headshot.
They have our flag. Take it back.
Close. Enemy field's down.
Enemy flag carrier spotted.
No scope.
Another trophy for the pie.
Flag returned.
Oh.
5 minutes remaining. No scope. Headed over here. Killing spree.
Power items en route.
Spartan down. Taking cover.
Above us.
Take cover.
Power items now available. Not today, friend. They've taken our flag.
Enemy shields down.
This shit is so stupid, like the camo.
Look there, an enemy flag carrier. Enemy flag carrier.
Gave it to me.
The enemy carrier has revealed themselves.
Enemy flag returned. Enemy captured your flag.
Outstanding. They've taken our flag. You're exposed, Spartan. You're exposed, Spartan. Power items now available. I see headshots in your future.
Enemy flag returned.
We have eyes on the enemy flag carrier. has revealed themselves.
1 minute remaining.
Look there, an enemy flag carrier. We have eyes on the enemy flag.
Oh my god, I hate the lunge in this game.
Enemy captured your flag. Defeat.
It's a long ass queue.
Strongholds.
Lay claim to the zones and defend them.
Doesn't matter.
Keep your head down. Stronghold Bravo lost.
Enemy team scoring.
Overshield inbound. Not today, friend. Overshield available. Outstanding.
Come on. Fucking get the fuck out. Fuck me.
They'll think twice next time. Let's see them try to take it from us.
Your team scoring.
Not today, friend. The enemy has captured Bravo.
Enemy team scoring.
You dick.
Overshield inbound. The enemy has captured Bravo. Overshield available. They got away.
Cunt motherfucking pillar. Why are we not?
S7 sniper available. The enemy has captured Alpha. We've captured Bravo. The enemy has captured Bravo. We've captured Charlie.
Enemy halfway to victory.
Not today, friend.
Give it 0 kills.
Spartan down. The enemy has captured Charlie. Overshield available.
that other kid hit him for a fucking ounce. Now the guy's he's not dead.
We've captured Alpha. Stronghold Charlie lost.
Your team scored.
Stepping on grenades keeps you alive in this game.
Power items now available. Stronghold Bravo lost.
Enemy team scored.
I see headshots in your future.
No scope.
Spartan down.
The enemy has captured Alpha. We've captured Bravo.
Your team scored. Another one.
All these stupid ass
Up their shields.
boxes.
Lost a teammate. Tango's closing in.
Enemy team scored.
Hit him once, hit him once, hit him once. Lick him. Touch his elbow.
Your team scoring. Enemy team scoring. Enemy team nearing victory.
Stronghold Bravo is ours.
Your team scoring.
Overshield available.
I mean, look at that bullshit. This kid's standing still, not shooting. I'm shooting him, grenading him. I just don't care right now.
Stronghold Charlie is ours. Stronghold Alpha lost.
Defeat.
I'll be on later, a little later. I don't really give a fuck right now, but I'll try to be better later. I'm just